Welcome, everybody. My name's Gary Fortney, and this is The Trend. Well, thank everybody for rejoining us for the Trend podcast. As you know, we talk about different trends within law enforcement, true crime, cold cases, and trends within the regional issues affecting the St. Louis area, the state of Missouri, and the country. Today, we're going to get into an older case, an investigation that happened several years ago in 1909. It's a case involving a young lady named Palestina Issa, I-S-A. She went by Tina Issa, known by her friends and some of her family. And we're going to talk about the death of Tina Issa as a result of what was considered an honor killing in the St. Louis area. So on November 6th of 1989, Issa was killed inside her home in the St. Louis area. And during the investigation, it resulted in her father and mother both being arrested for her murder. But there's a lot of details that led up to this death, along with the honor killing aspect that became very prominent in the St. Louis region at that time. Today for the podcast, we're joined by the producer of the Trend podcast, Aly Vogt. Thanks, Aly, for joining us.
Thanks, Gary.
And Aly's going to be filling in a lot of the gaps regarding the actual honor killing and the aspects of the cultural differences between different regions and countries within the world. And that comes down to the situation of involving Tina's death. So, Aly, you want to do a quick setup here, and maybe we can move on?
Yeah, sure. So, Tina Issa was born in 1972, December 3rd to be exact, and she was murdered in 1989. So she was only 16 years old when she was murdered. And she was murdered by her parents. She was stabbed to death by her parents, Zane and Maria Issa, and it was considered an honor killing. But their home was actually bugged at the time that Tina was killed. Is that right, Gary?
Yeah, actually, there was back in the 80s and 90s, as still is today, there are terrorism investigations that go on continuously involving the United States tracking down terrorist activities that could affect the safety of individuals worldwide. And back then, there was a certain terrorist organization that the FBI was targeting, and the FBI, as a result, had information that Tina's father, Zane, been involved in terrorist activities. And what happened is the FBI, they have certain operations. They actually had listening devices inside their house, along with their phones being tapped to gather information. I'll talk about the name of the organization shortly. But yeah, Aly, the FBI had the entire house wired for sound, and that actually resulted in the solving of this case in a very expedient manner, which was a tribute to the death of Tina Issa.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about mom and dad who committed the murder. Her mom, Maria, was 46 years old at the time that Tina was killed, and she was born in Brazil. Her father was born in Palestine and had actually immigrated to Brazil, and that's where her mother and father had met.
That's correct.
Tina was actually born in Brazil, so she herself was an immigrant. I think she was only 12 years old at the time that she moved to America.
Yeah, and she was born in Brazil. Didn't they live overseas also, Aly? I think they lived somewhere else, didn't they?
Yeah, they lived in several countries before they settled in St. Louis. I know Puerto Rico was one of them, but she actually spoke 4 languages.
I think that's something.
Really impressive at 16 to speak 4 languages.
Yeah. You know, and think about this: the young lady, 16 years old when she died, how much she had developed in her life prior to that time period, learned 4 languages, pretty much born in Brazil and moved different parts of the world, eventually ended up in the United States. Yeah, that's just part of her background. She had some educational experience, didn't she? Wasn't she going to college for certain things? So think about her education. Get into that a little bit, Aly, about what she was doing, what her goals were.
Yeah, sure. Tina was actually a really, really gifted student. She had plans to go to St. Louis University. She was going to go to the school for aviation and technology. She wanted to be a pilot.
Yep.
And I think for her father, who I want to emphasize was very strict Muslim, and her mother, I believe, had converted as well.
But her mother was a Catholic originally. She was a Catholic, yes, and then converted to the Muslim faith.
Yeah. To have a daughter who wanted to be a pilot, it wasn't wasn't something that they wanted. And I think that was a big part of the family dynamic. They actually had 3 other daughters. There were 4 daughters total. Tina was the youngest. So they had arranged marriages for the other 3 of the daughters, the older daughters. And Tina was the only one left in the house at the time of her murder. Her sisters had all moved on to start their own families.
So the sisters pretty much conformed to the fact of arranged marriage. They were moving on with their lives, correct, Aly?
Yes, yeah. And that could be because they were older at the time that they had moved to America. But I think it was a little bit harder for Tina because she was in high school. She was making high school friends. She was playing high school sports. She really liked American movies, American music. And I think for her parents to see that, it was hard. And I think that definitely was part of their motivation in what they did.
Yeah, think about that. A young girl moving to the United States or America and experiencing American culture, American teenagers, American youth, where the other sisters were older and came here. So if it came down to an arranged marriage or continuing the Muslim faith, that's what the sisters did. But Tina, being younger and wanting more to conform or adapt to Americanized society, right? And that became an issue with them. And the parents were not happy with it, needless to say. And there's some issues that started regarding tension within the household involving Tina and her parents. Remember, her father, Zayn, was strict Muslim faith, and the mother had converted from Christianity to being a Muslim. And it was a big part of their upbringing that the father wanted to continue, have them Muslim, and again, arranged marriage. And Tina saw this coming, and Tina, can we say she resisted going back and she wanted to maintain the Americanized way of life?
Yeah, absolutely. Zayn had actually arranged a marriage for her already. It was set up, and she was meant to move back to Palestine, to his hometown, and marry a man there. He had everything set up, but that's just not what she wanted. She actually had an American boyfriend, and I think that's another really important point to this story. She was dating 20-year-old African-American Cliff Walker, and her parents, being immigrants, to know that your daughter is dating a black man, it was something that they very, very much resisted. They were not okay with. And they found out earlier that year, actually, the year that she was murdered, 1989, that she was dating Cliff Walker. And I think that is really what might have pushed it over the edge.
Yeah, and let me talk about some of the forbidden things that Tina was not allowed to do. They had a trip arranged. They had a trip arranged to go to Washington, D.C., right? And they forbade Tina to go to Washington, D.C. on a trip for junior college students. So she was going to college prep at the University of Missouri, Columbia. She had that arranged.
Yeah, she had scholarships lined up, and it was free for her family. So there was no reason that she should not have been able to go to that. That would have been great on college applications, and I know college is something that Tina really wanted.
Well, I got to look at it this way too. I have been in the Middle East a couple of times, and I'm kind of familiar. They do believe in education. A lot of the people from Middle Eastern countries, no matter what faith, they come to the United States to get educated. So the education part wasn't a negative part of them not wanting Tina to go to college. It was her intermixing with the American students and the American teenage culture that they forbade. Anyways, based upon them restricting her from doing things she really wanted to do by engaging herself with the American educational system, which wasn't too much of a negative for them, but the American culture is what they didn't want her to get involved in. So the languages that she spoke are very interesting because, to develop 4 different languages at her age, she had a chance to do a lot of things in life that a lot of people wouldn't have had, because multilingual is such a important part of culture now, because there's so many, we are a worldwide, how can I say, culture. I mean, we have different cultures throughout the world. So again, very smart. She spoke Arabic, Portuguese, Spanish, and English. Very impressive for the young lady. And again, she was attending St. Louis University aviation school at Parks College. She wanted to be a pilot. And being viewed as a pilot by the family was more of a male-dominated industry. And were they happy with that, or what were their thoughts? Aly?
I believe they weren't necessarily happy about it. But again, like you said, I think it's really just the thought of American college and the thought of American education and what she had already experienced in high school, and how her friends had pushed her kind of down a path, and she had developed hobbies and things that her parents didn't necessarily agree with, and that wouldn't be accepted in the Muslim faith.
And she was a senior at Roosevelt High School in St. Louis. Very good grades, very smart student. And actually, in my college class on Friday, we talked about, in my introduction to law enforcement class, about integrating from different countries to the United States and the cultural differences in law enforcement, the cultural differences regarding integrating yourself into society. I've traveled all over the world. My wife and I have. We've experienced different cultures. And give you an idea, whenever you go to another culture, you don't need to conform. You need to have acceptance, though, both ways. So knowing a few words in a different culture or different language of where you're going, and the respect, okay, for customs. The customs respect for other countries is huge. If you went to some other countries and you did a few things that are forbidden, you could really get in trouble. And also you can be in a serious situation of disrespecting the culture. And without getting too much into this, I think, in all honesty, the family should have conformed to some things Americanized, such as not committing honor killing, So, and again, it's not being completely converted, but conforming to culture, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, we can talk a little bit specifically about honor killing too. I think that's a really important part to understanding why this happened, why they chose to take this route in killing their daughter, stabbing their daughter to death. That's not something that I think most families would decide to do. It's definitely not normal. But I do think in a lot of Middle Eastern and East African countries, that's not necessarily looked down upon by society. It's kind of accepted. It's kind of normalized. And that's something we see a lot, not that we see a lot, but something that happens mainly with immigrant families is where we see that in the United States.
Yeah, that's what I really want Aly to get into is the honor killing aspect. So from what you found, I want to say it is accepted in cultures, right? In different cultures.
Yeah.
Does it still take place today?
Absolutely.
What have you found out during the research about that? I know you said a little bit already, but what have you learned about the honor killing aspect? Why is it done? What does it mean, honor killing? Think about the two words there.
Yeah, so the main motivation there is shame. The families, typically the head of the household, when a family member commits a certain act that might be against maybe a religious faith is typically where we run into that. The whole family feels the shame of the aftermath of whatever this was, whether it was like Tina having a boyfriend or Tina, specifically in a lot of Muslim families, they don't date before marriage. There is no dating outside of marriage. You have a marriage arranged for you and you don't have a boyfriend outside of that. That's just not something you do. And so for her father to see that she was doing that, even after he said not to, she went against him. He felt shame. He felt that people were looking upon him in a negative light, that his whole family would experience this shame. And the only way out of that, the only way to restore the honor for the family was to kill her.
And it wasn't just a father. Tina had a sister named Maria, and Maria attempted to have Tina withdrawn from Roosevelt High School because Tina was not obeying her family. And Maria actually was calling her a tramp and a whore because she's going against the family rules. And for her sister to treat Tina like that, just think how Tina was feeling. She had no support from her parents and no support from her sister. And that must have been very traumatic on Tina as she continued to try to develop as a young lady and develop in her own life. 16 years old, looking for a future career and not obeying the family's strict Muslim faith created very much tension in the household. Anything you want to add on that, Aly?
Yeah, I do want to add that she was physically abused by her parents before. Her friends had later mentioned to the St. Louis Post-Dispatch that they had heard from Tina that it was a regular occurrence for her parents to hit her before that. It wasn't something new, but for it to escalate to a stabbing is really upsetting.
So let's talk about the father a little bit. Again, the father was under investigation by the FBI for being involved with what's called the Abu Nidal organization, ANO. And back then, it was a large terrorist organization that was being tracked by the U.S. government, and the FBI is the chief law enforcement agency within the United States. Real quick, the CIA operates overseas. They're only an intelligence gathering organization. The CIA does not have a mandate or is supposed to operate on United States soil. The CIA only operates overseas. They gather intelligence. They really don't have arrest powers. They're not a law enforcement agency. They're an intelligence agency. Where the CIA gathers information, then the FBI is the actual law enforcement agency who is in charge of arrests. So the FBI receives information on the father. about his possible links. And then that's when they set up the recording equipment inside the house and telephone to track the father's activities, being part of this organization. They had been listening to it for a while. I don't know that much in depth what happened, but we do know that there was live listening the entire time in the house. And that was instrumental in solving the case about what happened with Tina. And there are recordings of the killing that are out there about this. And they did play it on the news at the time of the arrest and what happened. So Tina's killed on November 6th, right? 1989.
Yes.
Well, what was she doing the night that before she was killed? Where did she go on the 5th? What was she doing?
She had actually gotten a job, her first job outside of her parents' grocery store that they had opened when they moved to the United States. She got a job at Wendy's, and she had taped a note to the television explaining to her parents where she was. Imagine how scared you have to be to not even be able to tell your parents face to face that you have gotten a job. I mean, she left a note.
Would you consider that a negative part of young culture, getting a job and trying to work, integrate with society and earning money for yourself, So again, the family's unhappy with the fact that she got a job at Wendy's. And again, she had to leave a note to say that she was going to get a job. And the family wasn't happy with that. And to me, it's we all have different cultures in our lives, different cultures in society, different cultures in our own different areas we live. But to have such a negative aspect or negative view of your child, again, it's your child, and just trying to integrate. I don't want to say develop, but integrate part of society to where you want to adapt. And in the country of Iran right now, you have a lot of young people, teenagers or people in their 20s that like the Americanized system. And they try to keep them down. They're not allowed to have any adaptability to Americanized way of life, either listen to music, dancing, or any cultural aspects that they would view as not being Muslim conforming or not being part of the certain culture in the country of Iran. So very strict there, very strict in Afghanistan and other countries about the restrictions of women and what they can do in their lives. And I always talk about the freedoms we have here in the United States. And this is what bothers me a little bit. A lot of the young culture don't talk very good about the United States. They talk negative about us, about all aspects. In reality, the freedoms we all have, especially freedoms of young women, is a gift that's given to everybody. And you wouldn't really see it too much here. But if you go to another country, a strict country, you'd understand the aspect of respect for women, respect for pursuing goals. Okay. So again, I'm not getting into the political aspect of this. It's more of the freedom aspect of we all should be able to choose what you like to do. So I don't know if you agree or not, Aly, but it'd be like you young ladies who work for the company here. You're developing your own skills, what you want to do in your career. I think that's fantastic. And I do everything I can to encourage it. So anyways.
No, I agree. So we can talk a little bit more about the murder itself. So Tina's note that she left specified that she would be home around 11:30. And so she got back to the family apartment just before midnight. It was her first shift at Wendy's, the first and only shift that she ever got to work. Her mom asked her, where have you been? And used a couple of choice words, called her a couple names. Tina tried to explain herself. It wasn't enough. And her father comes in and he tells Tina, do you know that this is the last day? Tonight, you're going to die. And this was all caught on the FBI's recording devices that they had inside the apartment. So they heard all of this. They heard Zane specify that before he killed her, that's what he was planning to do. It was definitely premeditated. After that, Tina is heard on the recording devices. She's yelling, "Mother, help me, help me."
Let's stop there. She's calling for the mother to help her. Her mother, and did the mother help her, or was the mother part of actually killing her? That's the worst part of this. So
yeah. I think afterwards, the mother, admitted to holding Tina down while her father stabbed her. And the famous line that Zane is known for saying as he was stabbing his daughter is die quickly, die my daughter. And I think it actually made some of the jury cry during the trial. It was really unsettling to hear Tina yelling out for help and crying and groaning as her own father was killing her.
He stabbed Tina in the chest, if I'm not mistaken, with a fillet knife. If I'm not mistaken, Aly, while the mother held her down. And they tried to have a defense in court. Do you remember what the defense was? Let's go for the defense real quick. So let's back up a little bit. Tina was working at Wendy's on the night of November 5th. Tina comes home. The family knew she was working based upon a note that was left inside the house. Tina comes home. Family wasn't happy, confronted by her mom, right? And the father made the reference that this was the night that she was going to die. And so they killed her. Do you consider this a premeditated killing, Aly? No one. Do you think they had a plan that this was going to happen before she got home?
I do think that, I mean, it seems, especially because of the audio recording, that this was thought out, that they might have even discussed it before it was decided that they would do this.
So it's, again, this is all caught on tape, and to hear her words and the father's words and then Tina's cries for help is chilling. And then what about a defense in court? So this is all on tape. What they use for defense in court, Aly? Actually, the father and mother.
They were trying to claim self-defense. Actually, they tried to claim that when Tina had gotten home, she was demanding money. She apparently demanded $5,000 from her father. And when he told her no, he didn't have $5,000, he said that she went and got a knife and was coming after him. And I think, especially because of the audio that we later found, it really doesn't seem like that's a likely defense.
I would say it was a lie. If you want my opinion.
Yeah.
I'll be strong to say that, all right? Let me jump into this. So here's the father and the mother wanting to do an honor killing because they claim Tina disrespected family honor. Well, hey, father, dad, own up to it in court. I killed my daughter for honor. You know, be proud of what you did. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that's what he should have said. Hey, I killed my daughter. My wife helped me because she respected it. Own up to it. Instead, they're trying to lie and have a defense. Sorry, I'm getting kind of passionate about this, but you know, when they start lying, making up that she's the one who started it when she was the victim of all this, it bothers me to the point of, listen, honor killing, own up to it, admit it in court. But no, they had to lie and they had to make up a story to say Tina was the primary aggressor. So that bothers me in the entire thing. Okay, I understand. Yeah. Again, it's just it's unfortunate. Let's say.
Yeah. So in 1991, we see the jury finds Zane and Maria both guilty of first-degree murder.
How long did the jury deliberations take?
Less than 4 hours.
That's quick.
I really think having that audio, and we can talk a little bit more about the audio later and the specifics of that, but I think that hearing that is really what pushed the jury to deliberate that quickly.
Oh, absolutely.
And decide that quickly. So both her parents were actually sentenced to death. Missouri had the death penalty at that time, and the judge stated culture is no excuse for murder. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Remember, I'm not saying completely conform, but accept the culture of the country you're in. And the culture in the United States is not honor killing. All right.
At least accept the laws.
Yeah.
Because obviously murder is against American law. In almost all circumstances.
Well, I think culture too. What about treating the women and treating other family with respect? So forget about the law. Just how about just respect, and how about treating people with equal respect, no matter the gender, race, or the makeup of your family? Okay, that's what I mean. So again, there's the legal aspect, and then there's a cultural aspect of accepting certain cultures and obeying the rules and norms of a country is huge. When I was in the Middle East, if I did not conform, or if I was doing things outside of the culture, what would have happened? How about women that would walk around not covered up or disrespect the culture by not engaging and at least covering up their legs and arms when they're out in public? And how would the people in other countries feel if that was the case? So again, I believe in conforming to cultural issues in other countries, conforming to the issues here too. So anyways.
Yeah, no, definitely. Do we want to talk a little bit more about the audio tapes that the FBI had? How were they able to use those in the trial?
Whenever you do a recording or you get a wiretap in the federal government is called a Title III. It's Title III of the U.S. Code. So I was part of several wiretaps when I worked at the DEA. We call them T3s. So T3 wiretap is authorized by the court. There's a big process to write up all of the paperwork. The people that listen to the wiretap have to be what are called minimized, or have to be vetted to listen actually to the wiretap for investigative purposes. So it's just not you putting something on your phone and listen. There's a big process, a legal part that goes through for listening to somebody's private conversations. That's first of all. Second of all is another layer to be able to put listening devices or wiring up somebody's residence, their personal space for that. So all this is governed under court authorized circumstances that protects people's rights. There's what's called the FISA Court, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. And the FISA Court, which is still in operation today, authorizes things to be done for investigations, especially involving terrorist activities or issues that can involve the safety of citizens. And so if I'm not mistaken, the FISA Court approved this, if I'm not mistaken, for the wiretap. And the FBI received the proper authorizations the proper standards and the proper procedures to put this on. Again, I've listened to numerous wiretaps in my time when I was with the government, and very critical. But again, if the FBI would not have done this the right way or done the proper procedures or the proper legal aspects, it could have been excluded from court. So I got to hand to the FBI. They did the right thing. They're looking for a terrorist network. They end up finding the killing of a young lady. So it's so important to know about that.
Yeah, and the tapes were used in two really important ways during the trial. They were used to confirm that her mother was an active participant.
Absolutely. And real quick, Aly, what did her mother do again? I know you said it before. Repeat, what was the mother's involvement in actually involved in her death? What was the mother doing at the time of her death?
She held her. She held her from behind, held her arms back so that she couldn't fight her father as he stabbed her.
So, yeah, okay, jump back into more tapes a little bit. I just want to know the impact of the mother involved in this with the father. So,
yeah.
Anyways.
So the tapes were also used to disprove her father's claim that he was only acting in self-defense.
Correct.
There was no talk of $5,000, and there was no, proof that she had grabbed a knife before he had. It really all pointed towards him being the main aggressor.
Exactly, and that's from the tapes. Let me tell you a personal observation before we get into the terrorist part of this. Could it have been solved without the wiretap? And again, I was in homicide at the time. I was a homicide detective for St. Louis County Police in '89. And I remember when this happened. I do remember the case, all right? I was working a separate case where I had to have some tapes that were going to be transcribed from Spanish to English on another murder case I was working. If I'm not mistaken, the same place I went to did the transcriptions from Arabic into English language for the court purposes anyways. And I remember when this happened, and when it came out about the tapes, we thought, boy, I'm glad they had the tapes. But I often thought, could we have solved the case without having the tapes? What do you think, Aly? What would you think if you have a young lady dead and the parents are home? How hard would it have been to solve this without the tapes?
I think it would have been much more difficult than it was. I think it would have been possible for Zane's claim of self-defense to really take root with the jury without them really hearing the exact events of what happened.
Yeah.
It's hard to know whether or not they could have been swayed by that.
And that goes into what's called the pure investigative aspect of these cases. Back then, DNA wasn't utilized. DNA was developed in the 70s, but it wasn't being utilized for criminal investigations. It was being researched. It was not actually a conclusive part of evidence to use in court. And the parents were in there when she died, so their fingerprints would not really have a big impact unless it had been on the murder weapon itself. And looking at this case from my perspective, the biggest way to solve this would have been interviews. And let me explain a little about that, if it's okay, Aly. Get into the interviews part. It would start off with the mother and father, talking to mother and father, interviewing them, looking for inconsistencies, looking for the aspects of the cultural issues between the Muslim faith and the American culture. I'd have been looking for that, okay? I'd been looking for different parts of that. And what about this? Are those the only critical interviews that would have been done in this case? And absolutely not. Who else would have been important to talk to? The sisters. And the sisters knew the household they grew up in. And the sisters were adults, if I'm not mistaken, at the time. And I would have been so critical of the interviewing of the family members simultaneously. In other words, the mother, father being separate, then interviewing the sisters completely separate at the same time. And to check for confirmation what they're saying, check for are their statements the same, and even asking the sisters about the strict cultural aspect of their faith and stuff, if there had been questions about that. So the family dynamics would only have been possible through the good interviewing process that would have happened. So again, the lead investigator, which if it had been my case, I'd been talking to the father first and then the mother. Okay, they're the two primary people. And then other investigators simultaneously interviewing the sisters and gather as much information as possible. We've done that in previous cases where we'll have all the people in the police station at the same time doing the simultaneous interviews. What we find out from one, we would actually tell the other detectives, is it all matching up? And you kind of see my point, Aly. It's gathering information so critical. So
yeah, I think it could also be really beneficial, considering the situation, to talk to Tina's friends.
Absolutely.
As a teenager, there's only so much you tell even your siblings. I think her friends could have really important insight into maybe what led up to that.
You actually led up just what I was going to talk about, our friends. And what we call them are personal confidants. All right, let me explain the personal confidant aspect. When you have a missing person, either missing adult or missing child, you look for their close friends. That was a great point, Aly. So what we look for is who are you going to tell your most intimate secrets to? Let's say it's an older adult. You can tell them to your spouse or tell them to maybe your very close friends about personal things going on in your life. Think about that. Do your parents know as much about you as your first close friends? Think about that. So people always tell things to their close personal friends more. Now, if it had been something where she ran away, the friends may not be as forthcoming given information. You're 100% right. But there's always one or two people out there that Tina would probably confide in about what's going on within their family dynamics. And the personal confidants, the closest friends Tina had, would probably have said what's going on within the household of understanding the disruptions in the household regarding the American culture, the Muslim or Middle Eastern culture, and they were clashing against each other. That created the problem. So that's a great point, Aly. You're going to be a good investigator as you pursue your career in law enforcement. But again, family's one, friends are the other. So remember, personal confidants have more information than family members. So great point.
All right. I think we'll start wrapping up here. I do want to talk a little bit about what ended up happening to her
Sure.
mother and father. So they were both sentenced to death. But neither one of them were actually executed. Is that right?
That's right. They both died. You want to get a little bit about where they died, and then I'll touch about the terrorist case.
Yeah. Zain Issa died of complications of diabetes, and he was 65 at the time he died. He died down in Potosi at the correctional center down there.
Yep.
And her mother died a bit after he did. She was 70, and she died in Vandalia, Missouri prison.
That's correct.
So neither one of them actually saw the sentence that they were meant to have.
I've talked about this before, and I'll even ask your advice too, Aly, about the death penalty. I've worked cases where people had gotten the death penalty, all right? And I get asked a lot that I must be in support of death penalty. I'm indifferent to it. And what it means is, if I go to court on a case and somebody gets the death penalty on a case I worked on, if that's what the court decides, I'll accept it. If they say get life in prison, I accept it. I don't get personally involved in that aspect. I let the courts decide, but I'm indifferent about whatever the legal aspect is carried out for the case. It's a very big responsibility to be a lead detective or investigator, or a police department, law enforcement agency, to have somebody get the death penalty. You want to make sure you're right. So again, I know we're getting close to ending here. Whenever there's a death penalty case, it goes for an automatic appeal. It's automatically appealed. They look at every aspect of this case to confirm, which I like that process, first of all. I like the automatic appeal. But they both died basically of natural causes in prison. Eventually, Zain was indicted by the FBI in April of 1993 for his activities regarding the ANO, Abu Nidal organization. And anyways, his fear, I'm going to let you talk about what conclusion would happen here, Aly, about what happened to other Palestinian families in the United States. But part of the death of Tina was related to the father afraid that Tina was going to talk about his associations with the Abu Nidal terrorist organization. They're afraid Tina might be talking about the father's relationship to terrorists. And I think part of that was also the motivation to kill Tina. Did you kind of got that too, Aly?
I think that definitely could have played a part in that. I think there's so many factors in this case, and there's so many different moving parts, especially just, in any honor killing, there's a lot of different parts, but I definitely think that could have added to that motivation.
What about the aftermath? What about some Palestinian families and stuff? And what did you find out during your research?
Yeah, so some Palestinian families, after this happened, specifically in St. Louis, actually sent their children back to Palestine. They didn't want their children to encounter what they had seen happen with Tina, where she became so Americanized that her father felt the need to kill her.
And when we say this, Palestine is a geographic area, right, in the Middle East. Let's take out of the word state or country. It's a geographic region where you have Palestinians. There's a big uproar and a big tension take place between the Israelis and Palestine and the terrorist organizations, Hamas and stuff, and that's going on in the Middle East. We're not going to get into that aspect, but when we're talking about Palestine, they're Palestinian descent, and that was what their basis was, and that's where a lot of the young girls and young families eventually went back to, is the region of Palestine, to get their daughters and families out of the Americanization of the culture of the young peoples. Sad case. Gives you some information about this. One last personal perspective. I hate the word honor before killing. All right. That just bothers me. I'd come up with another word. I don't want to say it on the air because it's a family-friendly program. So anyways, honor killings are a thing that's still going on, hopefully limited within this country. It certainly takes place in other regions throughout the world. I wish it wouldn't. I wish there'd be more respect for all of us, including women, young children, men, everybody. Respect means a lot. And so again, this episode just touched on the case of young Tina Issa, who departed this world after being killed by the mother and father because you wanted to become Americanized. So anyways, thanks for listening. We really appreciate Aly's research, and we'll talk a little bit about this case. As always, stay tuned, stay informed, and we also go into the aspect of the facts without the politics on the trend. So my name's Gary Fortney, and this is The Trend. Thanks, everyone, for tuning into this episode of The Trend. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please feel free to reach out to us at The Trend's website at www.trendmediallc.com, or you can email us at any time at thetrend@trendmediallc.com. We welcome everybody's comments, suggestions, or reviews. Don't forget to stay connected with us on social media. Follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Trend Media Podcast, and join the conversation on Facebook by searching The Trend Podcast. Check out our Amazon page through the link on our website, where you'll find some of our recommended products. We'll be back next time with more true crime stories, insights on law enforcement trends, and current trends with our region and the people we serve. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and stay part of The Trend.